Hey viewers, welcome and good evening. Well, so today we are into the 17th episode on the 17th of June, and thanks so much, viewers, for being along with us. Those of you who have seen several of these episodes. For those of you who are joining in today, exciting. We've just moved over to the YouTube platform recently. We were on Facebook Live, and now you can see us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We have been talking about the subject of renewal of human consciousness. This is a subject which is captured in the book that you see next to me. It's a book that was, written by me, but actually channeled in December by a form of energy which I refer to as Guru Pranachandra, who's the Sutradhar of this book. And interestingly, this book is about renewing human consciousness through what you can do. Small changes in individual habits, which bring about huge change. In fact, the promise is saving the planet. Now, coincidentally, we saw this happening in the last couple of months. We saw minimal buying changing a lot of stuff. We saw minimal driving changing the air pollution. We saw staying at home bringing the dolphins into our waters. I mean, how cool is that? We are not far away from saving the planet if we just look at what we can do, the power of doing things at an individual level. That, friends, is what I call renewalism. I'm just going to run a scroll below here so you can read for yourself. Renewalism is said to be a huge movement which is sparked by individual lifestyle changes, by choice, pretty much like veganism. It was a choice, and that was to save exploitation of animals. This is to save our species. You know, the way that we're going around with technology, the way that we're going around with mindless living, we are encountering states of moral decay, systemic decay, and decay of one's own sense of self, principles, and whatever else. I'm joined today by a very, very interesting person. His name is Deepakmaheshwari. He's a public policy expert. And I believe that what we're going to talk about today is going to give you the confidence that you can take the power in your hands to make changes at a systemic level. Now, that comes from this book. It's part of the whole chapter, the whole series of habits, the whole section on systemic renewal. And specifically, one of the habits that Guru Pranachandra recommends, and I read out to you, this is available on Amazon. You can pick up a paperback anytime. Take a systemic decision every month. He says you decide to change a little system, any one of the habits that is at an individual level or that impacts us and our peer groups, family groups, or community groups, and make a system of it. For example, a few days back we were discussing energy and how solar power is not the solution to everything. Now, the solution that he was recommending is using high voltage appliances for 10 minutes at a time. It brings you more into mindfulness of how much you're using it. Every 10 minutes you switch off the AC, the effect will last another 10-15 minutes, then switch it on again, no problem. But you are getting more mindful. Do you really need that much AC? So if you do that at home, and then you do that in office, you do that in industry, big changes can happen. Now with Deepak, we're going to talk about how big changes actually happen, how the portals of governance and education and large lobbies, like medicine and pharma and stuff like that, how do they take this stuff? And why does he know? He's been a public policy expert with SIFI, MasterCard, Microsoft, Symantec. He's chairing and on the boards of several bodies like the NASCOM and various. So let's, without wasting another moment, get Deepak to join us. And let me take the book out. You can pick it up from renewalism.com. There we are, Deepak. Hi, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandeep. And good evening, everyone.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, guys, you can type your questions in, you can type your comments now during the show, or since a lot of people would catch this after it's live, rest assured we'll come back here and love to answer your questions. Meanwhile, I have a question to kick off, Deepak, because
Sure.
even while I was being channeled that book and that habit, I was not sure whether at an individual level people feel empowered enough to have anybody hear them. And since you've done this and you know both sides of the story, how exactly would you say that a person can go about in creating that starting point of making a change in any kind of policy?
So I think first of all, when we are looking at this whole policy space, what we need to realize is that policies are also being made by people and for people and by
Right.
people. Okay. So although we may say, okay, the government is making a policy, but within the government also there are people. And then there are people like us whom the policy may impact. So that's the first point. Now, second thing is when we are looking at any policy, the policy has to serve a particular public purpose. So let me give you an example. Right
Yeah.
now we are talking on internet platform, and yes, people might be using YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., anything like that. Now, what if the government of India had said that yes, you can use internet, but you can use only those platforms that the government of India permits? Okay, and this is not
Right.
something outlandish. Actually, on 15th of January 1998, I know I'm dating myself, but 15th January 1998, the government of India did announce an internet policy. And for many of the people here who would know the Archie comics, so there used to be these characters like Archie, Veronica. Okay, so this
Okay.
particular internet policy on 15 January 98 actually mentioned that you can offer internet services like the private ISPs, but what is it that they can offer? They can offer email, they can offer internet web access, and a few other things. And apart from that, what it did mention, and I'm not joking, I'm not making it up, it did mention Archie, Veronica, and Gopher by name. And why? Because Archie, Veronica, and Gopher, these were amongst few others, some of the popular search engines way back in 1998. So they did
All
mention
right.
these. Now, the interesting part was after this, what they said, that in case you want to offer anything else beyond these, you'll have to come back to us, take our permission. If we say yes, you can offer it. If we say no, sorry, you can't do it. So what did we do? Now, I was working at that time with a potential ISP. They had a license. There used to be, by the way, a license even for just email service in this country, telecom license. There were a few other companies, and we were already tracking this development. And the moment this policy came, and this was a formal policy, it was not even a draft, it was a formal policy. We
Yeah.
went to our lawyer, and on 16 January evening, before the close of the business hours, around 5:30 or so, we had filed a detailed petition in Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, which at that point of time was quasi-judicial body. So it did have like a court type of hearing. And on 17th of February, they actually granted an injunction on that particular policy. And later, in the
Immediately.
same year, yes, and in the same year, on 6th of November 1998, we got a much better policy. And this time, what the policy said, internet services or service means all types of internet access / content services except telephony on the internet, because at that time, like the way we are
Right.
talking right now, was not permitted at that point of time. It was got permitted subsequently. But I'm saying that rather than having a very small list of positive list, what became was a fully open system from January to November with only one negative covenant. So things are possible. And I was
Wow.
a proponent in that case. So I was the one who had signed the petition.
Nice to know. I keep getting bits and pieces of your accomplishments. This is great to know. So, moving forward on the same track, now, like the government has broad-based that policy almost 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And till date, now I guess telephony is also in a sense included. But how do we look at stuff like education, for example? That's another moot point, another system which Guru Pranachandra and myself are quite cut up with. And in fact, day after tomorrow, we will have a talk on real education. But the NCERT and the syllabus and the systems for delivering that are weak, and everybody understands the amount of change that the millennials need in the inputs that they get. So, how would a principal or a teacher or even a parent start on something like that? I know this is completely outside the IT domain, but just thinking aloud.
Okay. So when we are looking at something like education, and especially in a country like ours, where we have still hundreds of millions of people who are illiterate, we still have a lot of students who keep dropping out of school for different reasons at different stages in their life span. Especially for girls, there's a much more challenging.
Right.
But now, when we are looking at this whole education space, I think what's happened is that for past 2 centuries, the way the formal education works all over the world, especially I'll say the K-12, has not really changed much. You still have go to a classroom. Now, only thing is, yes, when you and I were in a class, we had a blackboard, and today, yes, I know that in some of the schools you do have a whiteboard instead of a blackboard. Okay, but the fact is, effectively it's the same. That you get a teacher there. There are different teachers for different subjects, and they are the ones who. So it's a one-way delivery by the teacher to a set of students, and then there are exams, assessments, etc. And then you move from one class to another class, etc. Now, what stops from for a student, let's say who is in class 6? Now, if that student is very passionate or very competent about a particular subject in, let's say, mathematics in of ninth or 10th standard, today our education system just does not allow that student to compete with the students of the class 10. Leave aside that, I'm not saying going down, let's say competing with the students in class 2, but I'm saying, okay, what about competing with class 10? There's absolutely no opportunity.
Right.
So, and you have to have the whole of class 6, and then only you can move to class 7. So maybe you do
Right.
not do very well on biology, but on other subject, but no, you stay here and things like that. Now, I think what something very small has done right now is actually flipping this whole model on its head, and that's the coronavirus. Because
Very interesting.
I mean, it has been forced upon us, I know, but all over the world, more than 1 billion children were actually out of school who were earlier going to school. I'm not even talking of those children who have never, not, who were out of school. That's a different challenge. But the children who were in school, more than 1 billion of them had to do this remote schooling. And that, of
True.
course, again, thanks to the internet, things became possible. But it also became a challenge because what about the students who do not have an internet connection? What about students who do not have a smartphone? What about a teacher who has never done this type of thing? Maybe they've done some WhatsApp and some other stuff, but have never done this type of thing. What about a teacher doing these classes from her home, where you already have some other activities going on and you have these things also happening? So there are other type of challenges. But the fact is that this small thing called coronavirus has actually made a huge thinking process change within the education space also.
Really. In fact, I'm so happy that you touch upon this, which is so topical and so relevant in this context, because rather than reacting to changes that are forced upon us, we can, through change of policy, proactively design those systems so that teachers have the laptops well beforehand, so that students have the wherewithal to learn. And that can start from you. That can start from every citizen of every country uh, taking up the idea that there are these obvious savings of time and money and resources in online schooling, and also the flexibility, as you said, Deepak, of taking up curriculums of higher classes, because how else would a 14-year-old get to Harvard in India?
Yeah.
And if it's happening elsewhere, it can happen here. It's very interesting that you talk about it, also because a lot of these changes, which like telecommuting, for example,
Hmm.
which ought to be by design because it saves on so much operating costs and stuff like that, has not been thought of unless it was forced upon us. Now, since you're in the IT sector, how do you look upon uh, operations remotely? and across geographies, panning out as policy in the coming months and years?
So first thing, I mean, right now, yes, work from home has become a big trend and a big phrase. Lots of people are familiar about it, especially in the past few months. We may find it uncanny, but way back in 2004, I had actually written publicly that the government should proactively support work from home. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, way back in 2004, and of
It is
course, I did not.
uncanny that you say that. I want you to continue on that, but I also want to fill you in that about 2 weeks ago, I think it was on the 7th of June, that we had a guest specifically. He's a digital marketer from Italy, Christian Farioli, who said that he was recommending the same thing in 2003 and 2003-4, and you were recommending it in India in 2004. And that too was uncanny. This is uncanny. Tell us your story, man.
So this was something that we did at that point of time. However, unfortunately, you know, so there was a small closed door discussion about some of the things around call centers, BPO, which we call business process outsourcing, etc. Now, interestingly, of course, from the government side, there were challenges, and there continue to be challenges around security. And that time, as I said, about internet telephony, so that
That was
arbitrage
worse.
at that point of time, today it doesn't exist. So there were some concerns, but they were still sympathetic to this cause. But you know what? Who opposed this?
Who?
Co-founder of one of the largest BPOs in this country. Okay. And
Okay.
another CXO of another BPO who were also part of the discussion. And I asked them why. Because I had suggested this only as a option, not as a mandate. And they said, no, this is something that will sort of reduce, it will have an impact, adverse impact on the quality of the services that we provide to the whole world. I said, that's for you to fix your quality issues, okay? You can have quality norms. And I'm not saying it is a mandate. I'm just saying that this type of flexibility. And today, the fact is, those companies, as well as many others, they are all not only doing it, they are actually promoting, and many of them are likely to continue with it. Now, let me just talk about the industry at large. So,
Hmm.
interestingly, what happened in India is this: that right in when this thing started in February itself, some people started thinking about that there's a likelihood that these things may come to India. What will happen? We have so many people serving the whole world in case similar type of lockdowns happen in India, which were happening at that point of time in China, Korea, etc. How are we going to
Right.
do things? So what happened? People started developing their own arguments, their own plan B, C, etc. And one of the big things was that okay, maybe some people may be asked to work from home. Some people at that point of time, but the government policies do not allow that directly. So what happened was that people started developing their position. So initially, some people tried to do it at company level, and somebody talked to me, and I said, no, please, this is an industry-wide issue. This is a country-wide issue. Don't take it up at the company level, although you do have a power, as you said, at an individual level. But the fact is that just like the bunch of sticks, there's a much more power in the collective. And here was something that was not only good for the industry, but also very important for the whole country. Because after all, IT services are the largest forex earner for us. I mean, 25 years back, it used to be gems
Right.
and jewelry, and today it is IT. So when we are
True.
looking at, so NASCOM took the lead in that, and they developed a position, and they went to the government, made their case, and thankfully, in mid of March itself, the government did make a provision that yes, you can do work from home, and then there were some other clarifications that were issued. Unfortunately, those things as of now come to an end on 31st of July. So it has been
Oh,
permitted as a stopgap arrangement rather than at a systemic level, as you mentioned, as a policy for a long term to go. But at the same time, what's happening is that based on the experience that we have gathered now, efforts are underway right now to impress upon the policymakers to make this type of thing as an ongoing basis so that this is something which they can continue. The largest IT company, TCS, has already said that most of their people are not just in India, globally, will actually be working remotely.
I believe Twitter and Google have made similar announcements.
Yeah, many other companies, in fact. You look at this way, the government itself, for past few months, even today, in many government offices, you have people going by rosters. Okay, so they have their own rosters. So not everybody, even if the office is open, not everybody of that office is actually physically present every single day. So it's happening within the government also.
Right, right. So I think that's the moral of the story. I think the key is that we are past the time when we needed changes thrust upon us. We've seen how it feels when we are forced into change suddenly. That's what's happened thanks to the COVID crisis. But we are now in the stage as we're getting out of lockdowns where we design these habits ourselves. We have some very interesting comments here back on the teachers and learning stuff because please add your comments here as we see it. This is the common sentiment. For example, Meenu says that learning is self-paced in work process.
Yeah,
Teachers are facilitators. And Meenu, we'd love to hear more from you when we talk about real education day after tomorrow. Meanwhile, while I will come back to Deepak in a bit, I'd like you guys to know that every evening, 9 p.m., log in here. We have a new guest. Tomorrow, we're going to move from the tech policy space to the medical space. And in fact, I was very keen to rib Deepak on the medical platform also, because that's another huge lobby which we can make a lot of change too. And we're going to talk about it with Dr. Arvind Sinha, who's joining us from Jodhpur. He's the administrative head of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences there. And spread the word, get people involved, because it's your health we'll be talking about. So, meanwhile, you've got renewalism there. Do pick up a copy. This is what it looks like, and participate in the renewalism movement. That's key. So, Deepak, that said, I'd like to know if there are any last bits of wisdom that you want to leave us with, which make us feel empowered. To give you a starting point, there is another habit that is articulated about writing renewal messages every day. This is something which can become a habit, a personal habit. We talked about it with one of the team dynamics experts earlier this month, and he quoted something very interesting. I think it was on the 3rd of June. You could look up the playlist about a movie, but based on reality, where 60 messages from this, I don't remember the name, this gentleman got uh, changes for providing $200 of books for a prison cell. And that was something that just happened because of that persistence. So what do you feel, Deepak, about persistence? I know there are people who very persistently run these RTI requests and stuff like that,
yeah.
but how do you advocate that?
So, for example, so I think one very important thing in this whole context is that when you are looking at doing so, I think one very important thing is that people need to read a lot. Okay, so even if I am in the IT and telecom space, I do look at some of the other policies in some of the other areas also. So, for example, national security. I mean, IT and telecom, yes, but national security, because we do have some issues related to national security and cyber security and IT telecom having things there. But also medical, healthcare policy, why not? Education policy, we did look at education policy and also in a big way. We also looked at things like pollution, for example. You did mention about pollution. So how IT and telecom can actually help in the pollution mitigation. I mean, the fact is the data centers also generate heat. Okay, they do consume power, but they do generate heat. But at the same time, maybe collectively, whatever we are doing through telecommuting, etc., we are reducing the footprint somewhere else. So yes, there's some water bed effect, but then there's some additional gains also. So there are a lot of opportunities. One thing I also want to add to what Meenu mentioned, I think the future is not going to be only about an online classes only. I think teachers do have a very important role. and as she very rightly mentioned about as a facilitator. But what is going to happen is that not only in terms of the pace, interest, etc., the teachers. So I think there's going to be more of blended learning in future, and may not be so much in terms of different grades and classes, but it might be more around different type of competencies and skills.
True, true. True. Awesome. Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you, viewers, for this time we spent together. I hope you got some confidence that you can take power in your hands because policies do change. I will repeat Deepak's starting statement: people make policy. There are always people on the other side of the table. All you have to do is have that human connect and have the clarity that this is the time for renewal and you're going to make a change there. So, on that promise of making changes, your end, my end, Deepak's end, and the policymakers, we sign off for tonight. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Deepak.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.